This is Christmas Day, year 2003, December 25th, 2003, and we're in Rockville, Indiana, which is in Park County, and today I'm going to be interviewing my uncle, who was a veteran of the Vietnam War experience. My uncle's name is John W. Nowling, who's from Park County, and will give a little bit of a history of his experiences in Vietnam and what it was like when he was in the armed forces for the Richard Luger program. So first question, John, what service were you in?
I served with the United States Army.
Okay, and were you drafted or enlisted?
I was drafted in August of 1966.
Mm-hmm. And at that time, were you at home?
Yeah, I was living over where the folks lived.
Okay, and then where was that? Where were you living?
R4, Rockville, Indiana, over by Mecca, Indiana, actually.
Okay, and so do you recall what the first days were like when you were drafted, when you went into early training, what that's sort of like?
Yeah, I can remember basic training quite well. I went in, like I said, August of 1966. Since I'm a warm weather person, well, I was fortunate to have to go through all that outside activity and weather that agreed with me. But I guess my most the memory I carry with me from basic training is just, it was a time when thousands of men were going into the service literally each month, and big long lines of green recruits just as far as you could see in morning formation. That's the main thing that I like to carry from my basic training with me.
How old were you? You were?
I was 23.
23, and this was
1966.
1966. You were 23. And a little bit more about boot camp. What kind of experiences did you have there, and what were the instructors like? What was it sort of like? Was it pretty tough for boot camp? Or?
No, it was difficult, yeah, but not unbearable. But my drill sergeant was Sergeant Watson. He was kind of a smart guy, but so a lot of dismounted drill and marching and formation, and basic training with the rifle, and I guess the most intense part of it, I guess, is the part where they have live fire going over your head, and you're to do this infiltration course. I went through that. So that was probably the roughest thing, and the most scary thing, to have actual live bullets going over your head.
Yeah, because you had hunted and fished and stuff like that before.
I was
You're used to
firearms.
But it was just not being shot at or bullets. Yeah,
so.
which. Okay, and so which war did you serve in, and where exactly did you go?
Okay, I served in the Vietnam War, and I arrived in Vietnam on February 7th, 1967, and I arrived at Tan Son Nhut Airfield. That was, to me, I was like, just going into the war was like going into history, because I'd seen Tan Son Nhut Airfield on the news all the time, you know, in the weeks and months before I went over there. So to me, it was just like kind of stepping into a historic event to see Tan Son Nhut Airfield, to get off the plane and see that Tan Son Nhut Airfield in block letters. And the first impression that hit me of Vietnam was the stifling heat, humidity of just walking off that plane, and it hit you just like that.
Your training was in warm weather, but it wasn't anything like Vietnam when you arrived. It was
right.
It was totally different.
Vietnam is, of course, a tropical environment, and it's also very humid most times of the year. So.
And so right when you landed, then were you transported to a base, or you land right in the base area that you started in?
Tan Son Nhut was like an international airport, and but mainly had military traffic in and out of it, but some commercial traffic also. And so I was surprised we actually had to go through customs and everything. I thought we was just part of a military movement, you know, no one had to go through Vietnamese customs. And it was kind of in a building that just took you back to like the 1930s. I think the French probably built it, and the terminal building had big black ceiling fans and stirring that hot air up a little bit. But then I was transported by bus from Tonsanut to, at the time, it's also in the news quite frequent, Camp Alpha they called it, which was one of the initial processing points for soldiers.
And what did the landscape look like? What did you could see? Is it pretty?
Okay, well, I was just Camp Alpha for 3 or 4 hours, and then I was taken to the actual in-processing center, which was Long Bend base, and it covered like acres and acres, you know, probably 10,000 acres. And what you'd have to describe is just a big, barren, scraped earth thing where American bulldozers had all done their job, and you had this scraped red earth and a tent city, basically is what it was.
Oh, it was like a tent city immediately.
All these Army squad tents,
and what
big long rows of them.
What kind of job assignment did you have when you started out, and then how that progressed a little bit, like when you arrived, your job assignment?
Okay, from Long Bend, was just there like 2 or 3 days, and got my actual assignment to a unit, so which happened to be the 1st Air Cavalry Division, and it was in the Central Highlands. So within a day or two, I was put on a C-130 transport plane and flown to An Khê, Vietnam, which is in the Central Highlands. That's where the base camp for the 1st Air Cavalry was, and I was assigned as a rifleman to that infantry outfit. And
so with this job assignment, did you see combat?
Yes, I did.
You saw combat, and when you were involved in this, were there casualties and many casualties like in your unit and surrounding you, or?
Yeah, I guess actually all year long I was in and out of firefights and sniper incidents and booby traps going on, but I guess I might focus on the major firefight I was in during my year there. Might help a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be good.
On March 20th, 1967, and over by the central coast near the town of Bong Som, and that name is actually what I'm associated. My whole year in Vietnam centered around that hamlet and the mountains and the rice fields near it. On March 20th, another battalion in the 1st Air Cavalry that I wasn't in had surrounded an enemy force, probably of 500 to 700 enemy soldiers, and they were trying to keep them surrounded. So my battalion, 1st Battalion, 5th Cavalry, was marshaled onto this airfield called LZ English, and there's four companies in a battalion, so we spent the day there on that airfield. First one company would go, and they would jump into a point and set up their blocking position, and I thought that day we were going to luck out, and it was night had come and we were still on the airfield, and they just started taking us into the interior of the camp just to spend the night, when they decided no, they needed us after all, because Company A of my battalion got hit in this certain village. There was a firefight going on, so they wanted us to go into it. So I made my first night assault that night, March 20th, and that was kind of frightening. You know, you basically can't see anything at night, of course, and so it's kind of a frightening experience to be dumped off of a helicopter in completely unfamiliar territory. And so we made that night assault, it was about a half a mile from where the village was, of the fighting was taking place. So we had to make that night march over to that village, and finally came up over this hill and down to where we could see it. The village itself is just a mass of flames everywhere, like dozens of burning huts. Of course, they all had thatch roofs, so they made very good fire. So within the environs of that village was burning. It was just like almost as bright as day at that point. So we moved into position basically to keep the enemy from escaping from that village, any that were left in there. So that night the action just sort of died down, and the following day we got online and made an assault into that village. But by then the enemy had slipped out of it basically, except they'd left a few snipers here and there to as a delaying tactic. But so then that afternoon of March 21st, they fixed the enemy again at yet a different village, a little. So we made yet another air assault. This was in probably around noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we moved in a big long trail, column towards this where they thought the enemy was once again located. And my platoon had just moved into this coconut grove. And at that point, there hadn't been any real sign of the fighting that had already gone on in that village that day. But all of a sudden, machine guns opened up, automatic rifles, the enemy, and bullets started flying everywhere. So that was actually the most intense firefight that I had been in. So that took place around 3 p.m., the opening of that firefight. And I took a position behind a coconut tree. The thing I worried about most in Vietnam was I might get a head wound that would destroy my intelligence or my personality. So I basically hid behind this coconut tree, returning fire. And about 5 or 6 feet behind me and to the right of me, the platoon medic was in position, and he got struck by a sniper round right there and fell over wounded. So our platoon sergeant ordered us to get into a drainage ditch, which was about 30 feet from us. So we moved into it, and at that point we didn't actually know where all the enemy were. Some was behind us, some was to the front of us, and actually it was other platoons in the company that were taking the worst of it at that time anyway. They had been caught out in the open paddies when all this started, so several of them got wounded and killed right off the bat. So then about nightfall, the action just started dying down, sort of just spontaneously. And we were able to remove our wounded troops from the paddies. And that particular day, then, my company had 6 killed, I believe, and about 12 wounded. 3 of the bodies that had to be left in the village overnight. And then when they were recovered the following day, they had been placed on bales of straw and set on fire. Just probably like a terror tactic on the enemy's part. So that was actually the worst firefight I was in during my whole time, and that occurred just a little over a month after I got in the country. But it always gave me something to think about after that, just knowing how fast and how furious it could just all of a sudden open it.
Well, that's intense, like your heart racing, and you're just like on the edge. All your senses just,
yeah,
you're real, it's really
pretty intense, and you're looking
Yeah.
and you keep wondering, well, am I going
Yeah.
to get hit? Am I going to die here within a
Yeah.
second or a minute or an hour? You know, what's going to happen?
and you can't actually see enemy through where they're at. You see flashes, is that what you could see?
Flashes, and
You can't
I
actually
I
see.
never saw that first enemy that day. It's
Yeah.
so much foliage and
Mhm.
trees and bamboo thickets, and so it's very seldom you could actually see the enemy in Vietnam.
Did you ever have any chance of seeing prisoners of war or the enemy in certain settings? That you could actually see them?
Yeah,
Or just-
I saw enemy prisoners.
Yeah, prisoners.
And I guess the most memorable enemy prisoner that I can remember comes from September of 1967. And we had gone up a mountain where the enemy had been located the day before, and had been, artillery had been called in on them, and airstrikes and so forth. And my company moved up the mountain. It took us about probably 2 to 3 hours to reach the top of it. And there was a North Vietnamese lieutenant was captured that day. He had suffered a wound to his leg. And, well, as I say, the action had actually started the prior day, and so already infection and I guess gangrene had set into his wound. My company commander, Captain Little was his name. He was built like a football player, and he carried this wounded North Vietnamese lieutenant on his back, on his shoulders, clear down that mountain trail once we decided to leave the area.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah.
And this is detail I learned 2 years ago at a company reunion. And I talked to this Captain Little, and I told him I remembered this incident. And he gave a little more about it. He said, detail about it. He said this North Vietnamese lieutenant had been on top of a bunker in the jungle there when the airstrike or artillery strike first, and he had been injured by the initial explosions, and had suffered that severe wound to his leg. He was on top of a bunker sunbathing of all things when the strike occurred. And this lieutenant told Captain Little through an interpreter that, of course, once he fell into our hands and was being treated with all this basically kindness, you know, not being tortured or killed like he expected, he said that he thought all Americans were mean and ugly, and that he was surprised to see us there, that we were actually good-looking people. And our company commander said, well, actually, most Americans are ugly. Just my company, C Company, they're all good-looking.
Right, that's good. That's interesting stereotyping, but that's interesting. He would say that. That's interesting.
That's the conception he carried of Americans.
Of Americans. And so for you, did you have any injuries or any other things that happened to you like that would be memorable?
I was very fortunate. I made it through the entire year without being wounded in combat. The only thing I did suffer a little, I scraped up against a punji stake out in the forest one day, and that became a little bit infected, but it never amounted to anything really. So no, I was never wounded.
Were you awarded any medals or citations or anything like that because of being in firefight, being in the situations you were in and what you did also?
Okay, well, the 1st Air Cavalry Division was the only air mobile division in Vietnam, and that meant that it had its own helicopters, integral to the unit. They didn't have to go to an aviation company to ask for transport. They had their own helicopters. So quite a few of our movements were by helicopter, where we would go into terrain. We didn't know whether the enemy would be there or not. We called it making an air assault. And once a person made 25 flights over hostile territory, which all of Vietnam was hostile at that time, a person was awarded what was called the Air Medal. So I was awarded an Air Medal after my first 25 flights over hostile territory. And so actually during the year there I probably made over 100 flights across excuse me, hostile territory, but I never did get the follow-up awards on that. You're supposed to get a little white star to add to it for each other 25. I never did receive those, but and then towards the end of my tour I was awarded the Bronze Star for Meritorious Service, not for heroism, but for Meritorious Service. And it's basically just a good conduct medal for being in a combat theater. And I guess I shouldn't forget to mention though, probably the award I would be most proud of, Combat Infantryman's Badge, and that's by serving as an infantryman in combat for 30 days or more. You're awarded the Combat Infantry Badge.
Right, well that's something really to be proud of, because your life was on the line, you know, doing what the government asked you to do, and you did it with honor also. That takes a lot of courage.
You know, the CIB Combat Infantry Badge is something that most soldiers, you know, they were proud to get one.
That's neat. I've never heard of that. How about family? How did you stay in touch with family when you were there?
Okay, in Vietnam, the only way I had to keep in touch was by mail. And we soldiers in Vietnam, we didn't have to worry about buying stamps. We could write our letter home, put it in an envelope, and write free. Where you normally put a postage stamp, we just write the word free, so we could write home all that we wanted. So, and then that's how I heard from home, was by receiving letters. And usually we would have a mail call, at least 3 times a week, usually.
Did you have pretty good food, supplies, and things like that? What was that like, just being in a war zone and stuff?
They tried to get us out a hot meal in the cavalry anyway. I don't know how other army divisions handled it, but the cavalry, since they had all these helicopters, logistics helicopters and so forth, they would, our company would be out like set up in a rice paddy or a coconut grove or whatever. A morning helicopter would come out with a hot breakfast, and it'd be these sealed containers, thermal containers. That would have the eggs, bacon, and all, you know, the other breakfast fixings, all basically there. A container of coffee, and they would set up a little chow line. And we'd, of course, be very careful not to group up or to let our guard down. One at a time, a person could, from each position, could go fill his plate, grab a cup of coffee, go back to his position and eat, while the other guy took his turn. And then, also then during the evening, they would try to get us out, usually a hot meal of an evening, same way, in these thermal containers. The midday meal would be basically a box of sea rations that they distributed to us.
Well, did you feel any pressure, stress while you're there? You know, did it wear on you, or was it just right from the beginning you could feel it? Like in this firefight situation, obviously that would be stressful, but overall, could you feel some stress and pressure of being there?
That was actually the worst thing about being in Vietnam. Is the thing that took me by surprise the most, because I had wanted to go to Vietnam, and I didn't volunteer for it because I didn't figure that would be fair to my family to volunteer for something dangerous. But I just let things fall into place like
Yeah.
they did. Got sent there, got put in a combat unit, and basically from day one, and especially after having been in the March 21st situation, it worked on you all the time that whether or not you would survive the year. Even though you might not be in any immediate danger at any given moment and nothing going on, it's always on the back of your mind, well, am I going to get killed or am I going to make it home?
Yeah.
I just as soon not have had those thoughts.
Yeah,
but,
oh yeah, you would have to have those
but
thoughts.
they just come to you
And as
by being in
quickly-
that situation.
As quickly as a firefight could erupt, or a situation you could be put in that wouldn't be under your control, then you'd have to deal with it. That create a lot of stress.
So right now we're in the middle of this Iraq war, and I'm sure that that's what's actually working on the troops more than anything, is each one of them, regardless of whether he's in a combat role or like this girl, Jessica Lynch, that was in a support role and got caught up in a situation. They just don't know whether they're going to make it home or not, and that's got to be working on.
And that could wear on you. Did you do anything special for good luck, or anything spiritual, anything that you did in this stressful condition? You know, sort of just...
I took a little pocket New Testament with me that I had received when I got baptized in October of 1962. I got baptized in the church. They gave me this little pocket New Bible. Well, it was actually a Bible. The whole Bible was pocket size.
Yeah.
And I carried that in my left front pocket the whole year I was in Vietnam. And I still got it at home. And of course, after many rainfalls, river crossings, and so forth, you can't actually open it up. But I still have it.
That's amazing.
It went through the year with me.
How about entertainment? Did you have any time on leave or on time of relaxation for entertainment, what you would do, or what entertainers come in, or what kind of stuff happened where you were at?
Basically, each person that served in Vietnam was given at least one, if he served the whole year there, was given what's called rest and recreation leave at least once during his tour out of the country. And they had various locations they sent people to: Australia, Hong Kong, Thailand, I guess even, and Taiwan. I was sent to Taipei, Taiwan for 3 or 4 days. I got to see some movies and took a local tour to a mountain resort or scenic mountain area one day in my leave there. So then I guess one day they brought us in from the field and got us all new uniforms, issued us all brand new equipment, got us really looking sharp, and the rumor was going around we were going to go see Bob Hope. So we were flown to Cam Ranh Bay, and that was on December 23rd, 1967. And very shortly after we were all assembled on this airstrip, Air Force One rolled onto the strip there at Cam Ranh Bay, and President Johnson paid a call on us. So my company had been selected to represent the 1st Air Cavalry Division, and each division in the country, like the 1st Infantry Division, the 101st Airborne, 173rd Airborne Brigade, had sent a contingent. So there was about 2,000 combat troops there on the airfield to listen to President Johnson's address.
Well, that was exciting to be in that moment. The President of the United States giving an address to the troops, and did that lift your spirit somewhat, or just to give you an edge?
Not so much lift my spirit, but I appreciated the historic moment, put it that way. To me, I said, well, what if, 2,000 years ago I had been a Roman legionnaire and Caesar had come and give us a talk, So I thought, well, comparable situation.
Comparable. Yeah, right, it's comparable. Did you keep a diary or anything like that, or did you just reflect and keep notes and maybe later write some stuff down?
During my year there, I carried a little telephone address book, and I made a log of each helicopter assault that I made. And of course, I didn't know where I was half the time as far as the actual location, but I would make a little notation that would just help me remember it like that. Well, for example, one day we made an air assault onto a mountain that was actually out in the sea somewhat, separated from the land, and we landed on this mountain that's in the sea, so that's what I put on the little log, air assaults at mountain in the sea. So I kept that little logbook basically the whole year long.
Are there any other memorable moments before you move on to after service? Is there anything else that you can reflect about Vietnam that is a memory that stays with you, and that experience, what that has meant to you?
Well, I won't go into detail on each firefight. Of course, a lot of them are basically all the same, just a quick eruption of gunfire. But so I would just say the major firefights that I considered major during my time there. April 13th, we had gone up into the 2-Corps area where the Marines normally had operated, and we were the first Army division to be sent up to operate in that area. And we basically ran into an ambush approaching a village, another firefight. Then in December of 1967, we were securing the base camp at An Khê, and a South Vietnamese camp about 3 or 4 miles away had been overrun by the enemy, so we had to make a night movement by truck then to try to rescue them or relieve the pressure on them. And our convoy naturally drove into an ambush that they had set up waiting for us along the only road into the area. Then on January the 2nd, 1968, once again they reports we had an enemy battalion surrounded, and my company made an air assault and as a blocking force, and there was some fighting there. We ended up having 1 person in our company killed that day and several injured.
Would you recall the day your service ended and where you were and what that felt like after your tour was coming to a close, what that was like? Do you recall that?
Okay, once I got home from Vietnam, I had gone to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and that's where I was discharged from. And we did get a little early release, like about 2 weeks early. But yeah, I can remember the excitement of my Army tour finally coming to an end. Once again, be a civilian, and I had no desire to, continue with the military.
And in this experience, did you make some close friends while you were in the service? People that you contact into the future?
In Vietnam, you make close friends in a situation like that, and basically the people that are in your squad, like that's 6, 7, 8, 9 people, you're that squad, that's the basic infantry division, and you become close friends with your squad members. And
you really depend on each other, plus you
they were on a different rotation schedule so sometimes you would be like 3 months, this guy would be leaving, but a new guy would take his place, and then you become friends with him. So basically it happened all year long that you made new friends within the squad.
So there's a real sense of camaraderie, teamwork, because you depend upon yourself, but you depend on others.
Yeah.
A lot. That's so important. Did you join a veterans organization?
No, I've never.
You never joined. So what did you do as a career after the war, following your Vietnam experience?
Okay. After I was home about a month, I got on to the JI case plant in Terre Haute, Indiana. First as a laborer, and then once they learned that I had a college degree, they moved me up into the office. So I worked in the inventory control department at JI Case until they closed the plant about 18 years later. So I was in charge of the steel inventory. Basically, I was known as the steel man at JI Case.
Okay. Well, did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about military in general? You know, just reflecting back with the military, does that give you any another sense of what war is and about the military in general, as opposed to before and after?
Well, I guess the way I'll respond to that was that I felt before going to Vietnam that it was part of the struggle against, at that time, world communism. And you might as well say that was at the height of the Cold War. And I thought Vietnamese communism was all in collusion with Russian communism and Red Chinese communism. And so I was in favor of our going over there and trying to stop communism. And I held that view all during my year there, and also for a long time after getting back home from it. Probably I've got second thoughts about it now, whether it could have just been treated like a civil war, and we could have stayed out of it, and we'd probably been a lot better off. But can't do anything about that now.
Yeah, right. It's hard to change the decisions that were made, right, and political decisions and everything that took place. So, is there anything you would like to add, you know, that we haven't covered in the interview? Any other things you could think about Vietnam or military experience before or after?
I'll just say that personally, well, I've already just said, I thought we were fighting world communism, and that's the way I saw my role, so I was actually glad to be doing it. I wanted to go to Vietnam. I didn't volunteer for it, but I wanted to go there. I'm glad that I was there. I'm very thankful that I made it without being wounded, and that I made it through, of course, without being killed. I'm sure it must have been a great worry to my family, though, to have me gone like that, and I'm sure probably most of them, and certainly I know my mother would have probably prayed for my safety each day, and quite possibly I'm here as a result of those prayers. I don't know. So anyway, I do appreciate the support I had from my family, and that's also, they saved a lot of my letters home, and in my letters I do describe quite a bit of the action I was in, so I'm able to still this day, you know, review those letters and help myself remember my own experiences. So I appreciate that they did treat my letters with, I guess, respect or of a historic interest or whatever, and they saved them for me.
Well, that's a real important part of your life. You know, that's a real intense time of you maturing, growing, and then experiencing war, which many don't have the experience, which war is not something that our country necessarily wants to get involved in, but we were involved and you were part of that history, which is really, that's really
yeah, I've always, well, of course, I always liked history as a subject in school, so I always had this appreciation of not only being in the role, but the fact that it is history being played out, and I'm there to see it. You know, I had always had that sense with me.
Well, thanks a lot, John, for this interview and participating in Richard Lugar's Veterans Program, which is an outstanding program. So thanks a lot for participation.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad to do it.